All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our June Mailman Center Grand Rounds. My name is Christina Leon, and I have tried my very best to fill Michelle's spot-on shoes as a training director. And today we will be highlighting 5 of our outstanding advocacy presentations from this last year. Mailman Center's trainees participate in our Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental Disabilities, also known as the LEND program. This exercise aims to guide trainees to gain knowledge, skills, and the attitudes necessary to effect systems-wide change to improve the quality of life for all children and their families. During their advocacy journey, trainees choose a topic that is important to them and identify a barrier to services that is best addressed by a systems-wide change that will help a larger population of children. The trainees are then partnered with a faculty member with expertise in the area chosen by the trainee. The trainee meets with the faculty member to guide them and assist them in building relationships with these community-based organizations. It's through these partnerships with the community-based organizations, trainees will have the opportunity to implement their advocacy plan, which integrates evidence-based interventions to address the barriers that they have identified. Before we begin today, I would like to thank our faculty members who help our trainees through this advocacy journey. Today, each of the trainees will present their 5-minute advocacy pitch and will answer your questions after their presentation. We will allow 2 questions from the audience in order to ensure that all trainees have enough time to present, and after we have presented, we will open the floor to ask any remaining questions. So our first trainee of the day to present is Heido. Heido first started at the Mailman Center as a SALT trainee, and he later participated in our LEND program as a self-advocate. So I'm going to hand it over to Heido now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Good morning, everyone. I'm Heido Arana, and I'm here to talk about my LEND advocacy project, which is People with Disabilities and Law Enforcement. Now, originally, this was meant to be, I had thought about it, making it autism and people with disabilities and law enforcement, but I talked with my mentor, Shelley Bear, and she told me that why not expand this, which is basically what I did when I did the SALT program. I was so focused on my autism. And then I realized it's not just about autism, it's about all people with disabilities. So my mentor is Shelley Bear. My community contact is Teresa Becerra, the Executive Director of Autism Society of Florida. She gives presentations to the law enforcement to educate them on how to handle people with autism. I want to expand it to people with all disabilities. Now, why is this important to me? I think the images speak for themselves. I mean, first of all, the child in handcuffs is just horrific. I don't like that at all. We were all children once, and that can be very traumatic to a child. A person being thrown off their wheelchair is, unacceptable. And this was and then we see the gentleman raising his hands, and that too did not lead to very good results. The gentleman raising his hands was, I believe, a social worker for the other gentleman sitting down who has autism. The gentleman with raising his hands, the social worker, was shot, and yeah. But he's alive and well, but still. Why is this topic important? Individuals with ASD also constitute a small but nonetheless growing percentage of suspects, offenders within the criminal justice system, while those with intellectual disabilities comprise 2% to 3% of the general population. They represent 4% to 10% of the prison population, with an even greater number of those in juvenile facilities and in jails. So, that's a lot of people. The percentages seem low, but when you talk about percentages, in numerical, values, it's a lot of people. This isn't very up to date. The next one is last week in Charlotte, North Carolina. Police shot and killed Kenneth Lamont Scott, a black man with a disability. She talked about in 2016. She's a senior staff attorney of the ACLU Claudia Center. So, what works to fix this problem? The autism site had an open letter to then U.S. Attorney General requesting training to be required for law enforcement officers nationwide. The numbers of this signature, when I signed it, except I went ahead and signed it, it was 42,000 and growing. Now, this is being done right now, or rather, it was already done. It was passed as a law in the state of Massachusetts, where ARC, and ALEC, the Autism and Law Enforcement Education Coalition, in 2003, started training law enforcement officers about ASD. Now, this is about ASD. I want to expand it to people with other disabilities. What is already being done locally? With Teresa Becerra, we're doing the trainings, the CIT Crisis Intervention Team model system, and also they have the 11th Judicial Circuit Criminal Mental Health Project, aka the Miami model. My advocacy plan is, the problem is most law enforcement officers aren't trained to handle situations involving people with disabilities, which can lead to tragic incidents. And the plan is to apply the ALEC and the ARC model and the Miami model, combine them to create a model for training law enforcement about disabilities and make it a statewide requirement. Next steps, I contacted Teresa Becerra by phone and via email, and I continue helping her with training law enforcement. And I contact ALEC and the ARC to learn more and work together. Also contacted the Miami module, 11th Judicial Circuit Criminal Mental Health Project, and contacted friends to work together on this, friends with disabilities. And that's it. Okay. So a little update. This has already been passed into law in the state of Florida. So it's already a fact. So my next step, this is a little outdated. I wanted to update my PowerPoint. I want to mention that it's already been passed into the state of Florida. My next step is I want to make it nationwide. And even more, I want to make it global. International law, why not? So I grew up in Latin America, and they also need to learn this. Not just in Latin America, everywhere. So that's it. Any questions? Thank you very much. Yes?
Hi, thank you, Jairo. It's a very important topic, and I can hear your passion when you're talking about it. Can you tell me a little bit, you said at the end that the problem is that law enforcement officers aren't trained. Is it that they're not getting any training at all, or did you, in your research, find that the officers are getting some type of training? Can you expand a little bit on that?
They are getting some kind of training here in the state of Florida. When I worked with Teresa Becerra, I even gave a I told them my story, and I reached out to them. I told them, you guys are, your job is to serve and protect. You guys are like superheroes. You serve and protect. And so we look up to you, but we are also a little scared. So it is being done here in Florida with Teresa Becerra of the Autism Society of Florida. And it's already a law in, what was it? What state did I say it was? I forgot. Sorry, I'm a little nervous in front of people. But yeah, it's already been passed as a law over there. And what we want is for it to, it was a law that was passed by itself. It didn't have to be elected into law. They chose to self-regulate. So yeah, so it is working, and it's already been made a law here in Florida. Now I just want to take it nationwide and global, international. Yes, thank you. Time for one more question, or?
Anybody else?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jairo.
My pleasure.
So next up, we have Caroline Ehrlich. She is a psychology trainee, and she will be presenting.
Good morning. So I am Caroline Ehrlich, and I'm a psychology intern here. And I'm here to talk a little bit about paid parental leave. My advocacy project is a little different because it's not a creative, it's not a new idea. It's something that we've talked about for decades, and we just need a sort of better framework for, especially in the state of Florida. So this is an important issue because the United States is the only developed country without a federally mandated paid parental leave program. And there are a number of benefits to both the parents and to the employers that offer paid leave. So employer benefits have been shown to be improved employee retention, improved workplace productivity, lower costs associated with recruiting new employees because there's more employee retention, and then an increased likelihood that the parent will return to work, which again means lower costs for recruitment and training and things like that. And the parent benefits of maternity leave are wide. Infant-parent bonding, lower infant mortality, lower childhood poverty for mothers, more successful nursing, and then better long-term outcomes for the child. There's a small amount of research that shows that there are some economy-wide benefits to paid parental leave. That includes reduced government spending on public assistance, increased labor force participation, and from there you get a larger tax base, increased consumer spending, and then there's one study that found that when fathers take paid leave, it has been shown to benefit workplace and in the home gender equity. So when fathers use this leave, women are treated more equally, and the division of responsibilities both in the workplace and at home are more equal. So this has been in the news lately a lot, in the local news and in the national news. It's on people's minds. It's not only because it's a very important issue, but because we've just had this election where there was a conversation about paid leave, and I'll talk about that briefly. But so what we need is a federally mandated paid parental leave. I'm using that word specifically instead of maternity leave because this needs to apply to any parent, and because families come in all shapes and sizes. I have a slide for that. But there are some state-mandated paid leave programs in these states here: California, New Jersey, Rhode Island. There's some talk of New York adopting this and putting it into law. But again, that's a very small number of states here. That's my little peanut, by the way. So that's why this is a personal and I think a more kind of national issue. So the United States is really low on this list. These are the countries that offer paid leave. And 31 of these 41 countries do offer some leave for fathers. So few of them offer specific paternity leave, but it's a large portion do offer some time for dads as well. So families come in all shapes and sizes, and we need leave for dads, for adoptive parents, for foster parents, because you still need that bonding with the child. I think anyone who's worked with kids even knows how disruptive a child coming into your home can be, so we need time to adjust to that. I'm going to skip over some stuff about California. They do have a paid leave program that they put into place using a disability insurance program. So it's a taxpayer program, and it's kind of bare bones. It's 6 weeks at 55% of the salary. So it's there, but it's not perfect. But California did some studies on their paid leave program and found a lot of positive outcomes associated with that for the parents and for the employers. So the counties and municipalities in Florida have increased in the recent history in terms of who offers paid leave. So Miami-Dade County employees, City of Miami Beach, a long list of municipalities do offer this. And there was a Family Act that was going through the state legislature that Senator Bill Nelson was not supportive of. So one of the things that I was thinking about was trying to get people to call him and work towards support for that. But another thing that we can do, is try to advocate on a smaller scale for paid leave so that it can work as an example on a larger scale. So if we advocate for something, just let's say in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and do some really good research on the outcomes there, then we can start to expand it to state and then national levels. So that's all. Any questions?
Just a comment, maybe we can start with University of Miami.
That would be great, yeah. I do have this little GIF that I found that you can tweet or email to your representatives. It can be on the state level, or you can, send it to your employer, and try to advocate for all of the pieces of a robust paid leave program. Anything else?
You kind of talked about it in reference to California and how they are paying for this paid leave. Is it just, I guess in the other states that are doing it, is it just through taxes, or is it disability? Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Sure, there are a couple of different ways that states do it, and actually Trump's proposed budget includes a paid leave program, which I can talk kind of not very well about, but sometimes it's through disability insurance or through employer, like payroll taxes. And then there's some unemployment insurance programs that they've tried to tack it on to. So again, it is largely tax-based. And I think that's what makes it even just palatable at all to employers, because they're not having to come out of pocket for the salary without actually getting to work there. They pay in a small portion, as a payroll like Social Security does. But I think it seems like the most sustainable way to do it is just a tax. Yeah.
Thank you.
So how much time are you shooting for?
So I think I don't have a good answer for that, but I think 12 weeks at a minimum is important, and I think the flexibility between parents to take it as they see fit, right? Like for example, there's a headline about JP Morgan guy who just had his second child, and he went to JP Morgan to take his paid leave, and they said actually it's only for primary caregivers, and primary caregivers can only be the mother. And so I think it's, as long as it's 12 weeks and can be applied flexibly to either parent, then I think it's appropriate. Longer is always better. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. So now we have an empty MPH student, and it's Carly Brown. We're going to hear from her. So Carly.
Hi everyone, my name is Carly Brand. I'm a pediatric intern at Holst Children's Hospital. Thank you for having me here today to discuss my advocacy project. My advocacy project is about smoke-free car policies. So this is an important topic because secondhand smoke is associated with increased risk of many diseases and infections, such as lower respiratory infections, ear infections, sudden infant death syndrome, and it increases the severity of asthma symptoms. And working at Holtz, we see a lot of kids come in with respiratory infections, and a good amount of the parents do smoke, and they're exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke exposure. It also accounts for hundreds of thousands of new bronchiolitis and pneumonia cases annually, as well as thousands of hospitalizations annually in the United States. There was one study that demonstrated the air quality in the car with someone smoking that showed whether the window is partially open or completely down is similar to the air quality in a very smoky bar. As well as smoking initiation early in life is associated with being exposed to secondhand smoke exposure as a child. And in 2006, the Harvard School of Public Health did a study where they detected alarming levels of secondhand smoke exposure if someone was smoking for just a few minutes inside a vehicle, whether the car was driving, stopped, or the window was open or closed. And they also found a significant increase in the carbon monoxide level in the vehicle as well. So I wanted to show you a quick video clip that the California Department of Health did. They were showing what the air quality levels would be inside of a car, if the car was moving, not moving, the windows were open or closed, and how quickly the levels rise. So this is a brief example.
Just lit a cigarette. We have all the windows partially or completely open. And as you can see, the levels are actually starting to increase just from the cigarette. From the background green, clean level, now to a yellow or red level, which is getting up towards the unhealthy or very unhealthy level on the EPA index. So this is just from a single cigarette being smoked just for a few seconds in the front seat. Now we're actually above, getting up towards the hazardous level, which is about 250 micrograms. So as the smoke swirls around the front seat, anybody sitting in the front seat or the back seat will still be exposed to an elevated level of pollution that would be considered unhealthy by the EPA
Driving with all the windows closed, except for the driver's window open approximately 6 inches. The results are similar.
Now it's going off this scale, which is at 1,000 micrograms, and that is over the EPA limit for hazardous, which is only 250 micrograms.
Secondhand smoke.
So, like I said, regardless of whether you're moving, not moving, the windows are open or closed, are very unsafe levels of secondhand smoke exposure in the car. So what works to fix the problem? So there are some states that started doing smoke-free car policies. It works very similar to seatbelt laws. So if you're driving in the car and an officer sees a minor in the backseat of the car where the parent or someone in the car is smoking, they are able to pull them over and give them a fine. And also the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends pediatricians counsel parents on secondhand smoke exposure and cessation, as well as encourages its members to support and advocate for changes in state and local laws and policies. So these are the states, and as well as Puerto Rico, that have enacted these laws. As you can see, there are different age levels where the police officer is allowed to pull the car over and provide a ticket. I was looking to see why some states were 18 years and less or 16 years and less. I couldn't find good data about that. But regardless, these states have enacted these laws so to reduce the secondhand smoke exposure for kids. So my advocacy plan is to work with our state American Academy of Pediatrics to present this problem to lawmakers and lobbyists to introduce this as legislation in Florida. So I've partnered with Dr. Alvarez. She's one of our hospitalists at Holtz Children's Hospital, as well as the regional representative for the Florida American Academy of Pediatrics and a member of the Child Abuse and Injury Prevention Committee. So I presented this idea to her, and she spoke briefly with some of her committee members, and they agreed to have me speak at their next committee meeting to bring up this topic and discuss if this can be introduced to the lobbyists in legislation. And then here are just some tips to encourage parents to keep a smoke-free car. It's easier to tell parents to quit than it actually is, and so even if they can't quit, some measures that they can do to at least not smoke in the car to expose their children to it. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Just a comment about the age discrepancies there. From the time I've spent in Tallahassee, I would bet dollars to donuts that there is no rationale. It's simply a compromise for what could be passed based upon the philosophical viewpoints of different legislators.
And there was also a survey done, I believe it was in Michigan, that asked parents who smoked if they would be okay with some type of policy that made it illegal to smoke in cars, and about 82% said they would be okay with this type of policy.
And you guys, like in clinic, you don't necessarily always talk about smoking with parents, and even just starting to introduce the topic as a part of the counseling or guidance that we provide. That even if they do smoke, then try not to do it. I mean, we already told them not to do it around kids, but in the car is one thing. Specifically.
And also in our clinics here, we provide information about smoking cessation programs for the parents if they're interested, and you should try to bring it up at every visit. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
All right, so next up, we have Amanda Chung. She is a psychology trainee.
My name is Amanda, and I am one of the current pediatric psychology intern at Mailman. And to give you guys some background, I have always worked with juvenile young adults within the jail setting, and that's why I had this idea about how these kids are treated in the forensic setting. So first, let me show you some numbers. There are a lot, like more than you can imagine, people with mental health disorders, also particularly serious mental health illness. So within a 12-month period, there are 45 to 64% with any mental illnesses in the jail. And for serious mental illness, it goes down, but still a big portion, about like 1 in 5. And there are 3 times more individuals with serious mental illness in the jail than in a psychiatric setting. And so you can imagine that they're all like locked up and nothing that they're getting treated or anything. And especially in Florida, it's not only 3 times, it's 5 times. It's more than a national number. And there's clearly a need for formal training right now. About 50% of jails reported they have less than 2 hours of initial or annual training that allotted to issues in managing inmates or detainees with serious mental illness. And there's only about 3% of jails reported hiring deputies with experience handling inmates or detainees like that. And what makes it even worse is that not only there are a lot of people with a need in the setting, but also there's a lot of brutality. So 20% of the prisoners with mental illnesses have been injured in a fight after they admitted to jail or detention, compared to 10% without the mental illness background. And in Colorado, there are more than about 3% of the prison population are those with mental illness, but they're involved in more than 1/3 of the use of force incident. And use of force incident meaning that there's an officer using some kind of force on the inmates. And then in California, it's about 1/3 of the inmate population with mental illness, and they make up almost all of the incidents related to use of force. So you can tell like there's a huge disproportion in terms of what the needs are and what are the resources right now in the system. And to make it even more clear, this is a quote from correctional officers in Miami-Dade County Jail, which is right here. They said they use behavior modification, meaning putting our hands on them if they get out of line. So these are totally not acceptable. What worked so far? First, I would like to share with you an example in Maine. They have a 40-hour crisis intervention team training, and all the outcomes are very favorable. All the officers reported that they feel more confident in handling situations involving inmates with mental health concerns. And then they also feel more adequately trained. So that's good. But even better is in New York City, where they do additional 144 hours of training related to assault and use of force. And within just the first quarter of the training, after the training, 50% fewer cases of use of force towards inmates that might result in serious injuries, and 17% fewer cases towards inmates that might result in minor injuries. So you can see like a very definite, not only subjective reporting, but also objective numbers saying that we need these kind of training. And just quickly, in Florida, there has been a bill submitted to do more monitoring, to also have penalties for officers who do use of force against people with mental health needs. However, that has been rejected, and so an executive order has been filed, not as straight, but at least as monitoring, having like very sudden inspection quarterly, stuff like that. And there has been a 40-hour crisis intervention team training for patrol officers, that's law enforcement, not within the jail. And the results has been really nice. Instead of 25 deaths per year, it goes down to 5 per year. So it tells you that we do need to not only do that with the police officer, but also with the officers in correctional facility. So what I'm proposing is not only the crisis intervention team training, not only learning how to de-escalate the training, but also more about the signs and symptoms of mental illness, support not only to the officers, but also support for the inmates. How you can be there as a frontline person, how to deal with the day-to-day needs of the inmates. And of course, the most important part, which I rarely see in the curriculum, is self-care, because they're frontline officers. They do have a lot of pressure working a pretty decent amount every day, so they need to know not only how to deal with the problem, but also how to de-stress after a day of work with this special need population. So some of the initial steps would be attending conferences, making network, also gathering advocacy team to talk about all the different possibilities. Of course, focus group with the correctional officers. So some ideas, and hopefully we will have that set up soon. Thank you.
What's the policy for juvenile detention centers now?
There's not exact policy, so right now what I'm seeing is that the officer can do whatever they can. Maybe there's formal policy set, but in front of my eyes, what I'm seeing is that they are locked up, they are monitored periodically, maybe every 15 or 30 minutes somebody will walk up to the door, look through the window, and then mark and say, oh, she's like alive. So that's it. And then also we have seen how when we go do services, they pull the kid out, they lock them down. So think about when you're doing services, whether it's like speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, or like psychological therapy. You do it in a setting where they're locked up like this. Like, how are you gonna do that? There's no way that you can do good service like that, and it's really not working. So that's why I feel like there should be more training, there should be more monitoring, which is right now it's better, the monitoring is better, but I think there's more things to do quickly before we exacerbate this kid's condition, because if they have the service that they need, I'm sure that it will help with the whole system in terms of how much dollar go into the adult system, how much dollar you have to lock up people every single day. Yes?
There's been in the news a series of budget cuts for personnel in correction facilities. With the understaffing, have you come across anything regarding mental health issues in the correctional officers?
You mean among the correctional officers?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I emphasize at the end of my plan is that how there are a lot of talks about how these special population needing help, needing services, needing we should be treating them better, but rarely do people talk about what about these service provider, what about these people who are facing them every single day. I'm not saying that it's like stressful, it's necessarily stressful to deal with population with special needs, but certainly it draws some more energy, it draws some more mental power to do that, like for so many hours every day. And then of course these officers, they are also doing it not necessarily regular hours, they do shift. So the combination of all the factors makes it really hard to do the job. And that's why I think that not a whole lot of curriculum I've seen comment on the self-care portion, and I think that's also a very as important factor to consider in terms of modifying the current curriculum. Thank you.
Next we have Hannah Kadir, right? Did I say that right? Awesome.
So today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Lotus House, which is a wonderful place that I think as an institution we should partner more with, especially going into the future. And specifically CDAs is what I tried to focus on during my advocacy time. So essentially social determinants of health have a huge impact on children's lives, and specifically parental socioeconomic status is one of the strongest predictors of academic success for kids. And this is something that starts really early. As young as 3, we see a disparity between those of higher income and lower income and the eventual potential for kids, which is why there's a huge focus on early education, such as like Head Start programs. Unfortunately, as we go into the future, the gap between achievement of kids from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds is growing. So the disparity, despite what interventions we've already put, are getting worse. And these are going to have effects globally on not only just the education and development, but the health of the kids. And then when you take into account homeless children, there's an even greater disparity. So homeless kids are 2 times more likely to have a learning disability. They're 2 times as likely to have to repeat a grade in school. And then if you go into high school and GED achievement, sometimes if you look at certain communities, 2/3 of those kids don't have a GED or a high school diploma. And
in general, if you have low education, you're just not gonna live as longer and you have poorer health. One specific example of this is the diabetes prevalence. The difference between those who have a high school degree versus those who don't is twice the number. So 7% of those with 7% of people with high school degrees have diabetes compared to 15% of those without diabetes. And this extends to heart disease, the number of people who smoke, which has an effect on cancer incidence. It's the number one predictor of bad health in general and mortality in our country. And then the number of those with disabilities as well. And so basically education of all of the social determinants of health is a huge significance. And as a resident who works in the medical field, it's a little disheartening to realize that the healthcare system plays such a small role, like basically 10%, into the outcomes of health. And so I think that's why we need to be more involved in the other social determinants, especially education if you're talking about kids. And it's a two-way road. When you have bad health, you're less likely to be able to have good achievement in education, and then that feeds right back into your health. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. And so this is basically an important topic for me because I think it's a justice and social and human rights issue. When kids start off with a disadvantage, I think that's an issue that we have to address, especially because of the growing gap in the disparity. And so child development accounts is one potential solution that's been used. This idea is an old one. It was introduced a while ago by Michael Sheridan. And essentially it's a savings account or an investment account that can begin as early as the first day of a child's life. And it won't be used until after high school graduation for either post-secondary education to help support that, or if someone wants to go into business initiatives or some sort of entrepreneurial initiatives, it supports that, or for home ownership, because safe and accessible housing is also a huge determinant for well-being. And the overall goal of CDAs is to have universal, which means that every child would have an account or access to an account. It would be automatic, so it's something that's controlled by the state that the parent or the caregiver doesn't have to contribute to or sign up for. And it's progressive. That means over time it accumulates an account, and sometimes there's also matched at different points in the child's life. For example, completing elementary school or high school, there would be another investment by, say, the U.S. government into the account. And this model has been used in many different places. One was in Oklahoma. In 2007, they started the CDAs program, which they took it's basically a randomized controlled trial, and they randomly picked newborns and put them into two groups. Some groups, eventually 3,000 of which got a CDAs account with $1,000, and others did not. They just followed them over time, and then they gave them parents an option of starting their own account, and they would give them $100 if they did start one. And then they looked at the amount of money raised and the effects on health over many different studies over time. And since then, other states such as Maine have also implemented this, and then this also exists, similar models exist abroad. Singapore, the UK, Korea, many different places. So I think that potentially we could start a program at the Lotus House. So Lotus House is in Overtown. It's a women's and children's homeless shelter. And about 250 women and children live there in any given day. And for 135 newborns since the Lotus House started, it's the very first home that they've ever known. And of the 250 residents, 140 of them, a huge number, are children. Most of them are under the age of 5. All of them get basically early steps referrals or screening for developmental disorders and for help with accessing resources. But beyond that initial screening, everything else is dependent on outside partnerships coming in providing education. Most kids do go to daycare or they go to preschool or school. And soon there will be the Lotus Village, which should double the number of people who are going to be living there and expanding the services, including a children's wellness center. So far, I've partnered with a couple of individuals at the Lotus House. They have an interest in providing this. The only barrier would be that it has to be for every child, because they don't provide any service that they can't promise for everyone, because obviously there's a lot of social and ethical issues that come up with that, which is probably one of the hardest challenges of this. And then in addition, I've joined the the advocacy committee in CIR, which provides resources, and they're about to start a new funding program or grant program for resident-driven community initiatives that could provide financial support. And then many individuals at the Mailman Center have shared their support, and I'm hoping to extend it to the educational departments in the University of Miami to come up with a specific model. So in Oklahoma, they use the 529 college savings plan. So there are many different options, and we don't want to necessarily say that college is the only solution, although we hope that is. But maybe other ones that could be used for supporting other initiatives would be something that's better used. And in addition, the data that's at the Lotus House is very well protected for many reasons, and so hopefully by becoming more of a consistent volunteer and partner with them, I'll be able to get more data about the actual kids who live there and their needs, and be able to perform a more accurate needs assessment. So that's the next challenge, is strengthening that relationship with the Lotus House. And that's it. Any have questions?
What age do they get the pot of money by?
So it's post-secondary education. So after either obtaining a GED or, so the way that in Oklahoma State, the way they do it, it's automatically funded to whatever, say they go to a vocational school or a college for your program, the money automatically gets transferred directly to the school. So it doesn't actually go through the parent or the child or the youth. It goes to pay directly the bill. I think some of the other important outcomes I didn't mention about Oklahoma is that it improves parent-child relationships and behavior, and it lowers depression in mothers, and stress of poverty is really huge and another influencer. And so just the relief of having this money, regardless of the educational outcome, already has some positive effects early on. And one thing they ask mothers is, what expectations they have for their child, and almost every mother will say they expect them to go to college, but by the age of 4, those who come from lower income backgrounds kind of give up that expectation, but the mothers who are part of this program maintain that after that long term, which affects the way that they make decisions. Okay, thank you.
All right, so does anyone have any other questions for our trainees on their advocacy projects? Anybody?
I just have a comment that I liked how several of the advocacy projects, the ideas for next steps is to start on a small scale, with the idea that if it's successful, it could be a model that could be scaled up. And I think it's a good first place to start.
Absolutely, I think that we need to think big, but we start small, and that's how we make that change, by starting small. So I'd like to thank again everyone for coming today. I'd like to thank all our faculty members that are here and for helping our students through this advocacy journey. I think that this is such an eye-opening experience for many of our trainees, especially, I know that I didn't have to do the advocacy project when I went through the LEND program as a staff member, but it definitely opened my eyes to something that I've never experienced before. And I congratulate all of you guys for doing such an excellent job in doing the research and reaching out to these communities, community-based programs. So thank you again for all being here, and we hope to see you at our next grand rounds. All right?
Which will be in the fall, right?
Right, I think it's in August, right? This is our last one. We will not have one for July, so we'll see you back in August.
For summer.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, trainees.